let me pull up. That's okay. That definition's too vague. I'm trying to get a specific.
Could I recommend one?
Sure.
Could we agree that it is the political party that did not begin with Adolf Hitler because it came before him, but it was a political party in power during the beginning and end of World War II. So the party that, or let's not even say that because the war didn't start till, after they came to power. So let's just say from the time Adolf Hitler was chancellor till after. That's what we'll call Nazism, is the party platform and the ideology behind that. Nazism is basically the set of ideologies that came through during Hitler's reign as chancellor. I know it's a long definition, but it's the best one I think it could fit our discussion.
So you're specifically arguing, or you're nailing down the that we're considering the physical Nazi party not an ideology of Nazism. Am I correct?
Yeah, because what we're talking about is was this Nazi party socialist? Not is Nazism in general socialistic, but was the Nazi party socialist?
Okay. Do you think though that we could, for purposes of simplification, so that arguments can be more argued through reason rather than through having to dig through historical facts, could we just argue whether the ideology of Nazism is socialist or not? Do you think that'd be close enough? Because then we could use just pure like deductiveness rather than having to rather than have to start introducing factual evidence. Do you see what I mean?
We could, but then that would kind of get away from what I believe is the truth, per se. We can reason away that, sure, you can give a good argument that Nazism is socialism, but when we look at the facts of what the Nazi Party did and what they believed in and what they spoke about, we would find disagreement, I would say. So I know you and I are not learned enough to give a fully detailed, full lesson to the listeners about what the Nazis were exactly. But I think that if we get away from what they were and start arguing, well, Nazism in general is, then we're getting away from our central point. Were the Nazis socialists? Not Nazis now, those Nazis.
Doesn't what you're saying, though, automatically assume that the Nazis did not practice Nazism?
No, because they were, in fact, Nazis. We're talking about one and the same thing, but...
Right, that's what I'm saying. If it's one and the same thing, then it's probably more helpful for us being complete amateurs when it comes to historical, that depth of historical knowledge. It would probably be more helpful if we could argue for the ideological components, because that's more of a logical and deductive style argument rather than a introducing factual evidence and historical records. And I would think that would get us close enough to the answer to give a very good inclination about the Nazi Party. Because you'd have to admit that the Nazi Party practiced the Nazi ideology.
I guess then I would have asked you instead of you asking me, because I kind of want to see you do this. I know I'm begging the question, but how do you define Nazism then, if not talking about the Nazi Party?
Well,
what was the ideology behind Nazism?
That would be our next question, is we need to figure out what is considered Nazism, because obviously that's been thrown around a lot lately as well, incorrectly. So we need to hammer that down.
Merriam-Webster, let's do it.
Yes, let me pull it up.
And we have to give some money to Merriam-Webster because they are definitely helping us out today.
And I know, like, on the outside, listening to something like this, it may seem pedantic to go through all this, but it's very important to nail down the terms before you can have a constructive discussion, because otherwise the shifting undertones means that you never can make progress in an argument.
While y'all looking,
I just hope it doesn't take up another 20 minutes is all.
While y'all are looking that up, let me plug our our outlet.
Okay.
Real quick. So we are here on WOG 90.5 FM in Athens. but that's terrestrial radio, and you may not be able to listen to us. You may be outside of Athens some point and want to listen to the show. So you can go to the WOG website, go wog.org/live. You can listen to it, the audio stream there. Or you can listen to this show specifically and past shows of this show. If you go to YouTube and search Say What You Will Show, hit the subscribe, the little bell notification, you know when we go live within 3 minutes. And yeah, we're live right now. It's not any video feed as we normally do. It's just a montage of Nicolas Cage images.
Okay, for the purposes of discussion, how does, would you say fascism would be what we could discuss? Because that seems to be the most common outlet. Would you agree that the Nazis were fascists? I mean,
but
it's kind of synonymous, wouldn't you say?
It's synonymous, but we're definitely talking about a different thing. You know, if you look up Nazism, it's going to say it was a form of fascism.
Let's figure out if fascism is or is not socialism, and then once we've determined what fascism is, we can then determine how far Nazism is or is not to fascism, in what ways it deviates from it, and then that could tell us in what ways it deviates from socialism, since fascism is a more solidified concept. That sound good?
Sure.
All right. So fascism, according to Merriam-Webster, is a political philosophy, movement, or regime that exalts nation and often race above the individual, and that stands for a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, severe economic and social regimentation, and forcible suppression of opposition. Okay, so this leads us into the question, is fascism on the same, is it socialism? Is it on the same, in the same area of socialism, or is it far right? Because most people consider fascism far right, socialism far left. I would argue that there's a lot in common between the two ideologies. So, for example, both fascism and socialism have as one of their central concepts is the idea of a very powerful, very authoritative central governing body. And that government is highly influential and responsible for all kind of aspects of society, specifically economic and social, many times social outlets, and that the actions of citizens are ultimately to serve the interests of the central power. Would you agree with that?
This is where the ideology and the practice of socialism really gets muddied, because we like to think that in the practice is what we've seen, therefore must be the theory. But in theory, socialism is supposed to be collective, not state-run, but collective-run. That's why there are socialist companies, which are, instead of the state owning this company, it's a collective. It's literally the employees owning the ownership or share of the profits and the company itself. Same thing with all means of production. That's what socialism is. It's the collective owns it. We're not talking state. I mean, there are practices where in socialism where they call themselves socialism because the ownership of the means of production is not owned by private citizens but by the state, but is treated as collective. Collectively everyone kind of owns the government, therefore everyone owns the means of production.
Let me ask you this then. If in theory socialism it's not government run, it's community run, and the community owns the means of production. Let's take a hypothetical factory that's owned by the workers, and one very enterprising worker, through successful negotiations and consensual contracts, manages to get 51% of control of the company. So now he is the de facto owner and manager of this factory. Now, if there's no government in this hypothetical utopian socialism, then what's the remedy for that? Because that's not community owned anymore; it's privately owned. Is that just left to? Is that allowed? Is the fellow allowed to do that?
I think I think I just want to interject right here. I think the true communism is much like true capitalism, is where everyone has has the same mindset.
No, you're talking communism, though.
Not capitalism. Socialism, where the individuals own the company.
Right.
In the perfect sense, the man would not want to own more of the company because he believes that everyone else should own the company as well.
Right, but he does.
That's also like talking about capitalism and saying, well, what's wrong with? It's like when I've made this argument to you before when I see wrong with capitalism. I said, well, what happens if a company becomes big enough that they can just own a monopoly of everything, and that's okay in at least the capitalist sense, that a monopoly is okay in the sense that, well, the buyers make the choice to buy from a monopoly, therefore it's okay that the monopoly exists. The person who changes that it being a monopoly is people deciding not to buy from them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So in this, it's the same thing. It's we're assuming the worst, and I get that is critiquing socialism, but it's not really helping define it, because we're both that we can say that's a critique of capitalism, that's a critique of socialism, but really what we're talking about here is.
But you're saying that
socialism.
But
and we're getting into what does it really mean?
Well, the thing is, you're refuting the idea that socialism means there's a central government, because you were saying the people will the socialism doesn't need a big government because the people self-regulate under the idea of socialism. And yeah. I'm asking, since people don't self-regulate, since it's obvious that someone somewhere is going to get control of a factory, what is then socialism's remedy for that?
The idea, as I understand it, is that it's a collective. So literally it would be that whatever bylaws, and really now this getting into your area, contract law, whatever is ruling it, the company itself is going to be somewhere where it says every bit of this company is equally shared between all of you, and you all get to vote on what direction this company goes in. So therefore, it would be that, unless you vote to change the bylaws, but that's the same with every system. Every system you can vote to just change the system.
But the thing is, if the individuals agree to have a right in the company, the individuals are also free to exchange that right for other goods and considerations. So that even though you have a contract that says everyone owns this in equal part, that doesn't preclude the possibility of someone gathering more shares and gaining majority control.
If shares are even allowed in the system to be given away.
There you go. Allowed by what? You're saying, you said, assuming shares are allowed to be given away, who would stop them being given away? A central government, right?
Okay, yes. Let's just say I assume, yes, that's right.
Okay.
Is that major big government control that you can't trade a share of your company to someone else? That's a violation of bodily autonomy, because if the government says you can't trade this share that you own in this company, then the government is saying you work in this factory and you put wear and tear on your body and you give up your free time to work in this factory, and the benefit that you get from that, the share, you're not allowed to do what you want to do with it. We're going to tell you what you can do with it. So by extension, we're telling you what you can do with your body. We're telling you what you can do with your free time, because what you received in exchange for that free time, the share in the company, we regulate. So by extension, we regulate what you do. Okay. Let's just say that the government doesn't do that. They just let it go up to the people. You're saying sooner or later socialism will turn, socialist companies that will just sooner or later turn capitalistic over time, because people just want to share their say in. It's like if I told you that now I can sell my vote. Someone can come over and legally buy my vote for a candidate. That's basically kind of what we're talking about in company form, where someone can come in and buy my way of voting in my company, in a company that I technically own. Let's just say 100 people work there. I own 1% of the company. Mm-hmm. That it will now become legal for them to buy my 1% to be able to do that. Except now, let's say, are you saying then it should be okay in that sense that someone could come buy my vote and say, here's $50. I want you to go vote for this candidate.
If you set up
I'm buying. I want you to tell me your voice in political form.
I'm saying if that happens, where you set up the hypothetical socialistic situation, then
Yes.
it will devolve into one of two situations. If you allow people to have the right to their property and free will, then it just turns into anarcho-capitalism, because each person is free to do with their time and resources what they deem fit, and then you get into private ownership. If you don't allow that, then you automatically have to have something that prevents people from doing that, which you can call it any number of things, but ultimately it's going to be a central bureaucratic power that keeps those checks in place. Do you see what I mean?
Yes. I have a question for you. What do you define as government?
Government is any kind of, it's.
I never thought I'd stump you.
I'm trying to think.
You're umming and ohing your way through this. It's what is government? How do we define it?
Right. I'm trying to think of an inclusive definition. I suppose, I haven't thought this through 100%, but it would be a organization that exercises judicial authority over citizens, I suppose.
Okay, so in this fake socialist regime we're coming up with, if there was citizenry put together in that company to regulate that company, like a board that was voted on by people, and that board never changes, but it's still a regulatory board in the company, and it does have control over some things in the company, but they're voted on by people. Is that technically government, or is it not?
So you're saying each company has its own regulatory board?
Yep. Voted on by the people. They all still own ownership, even the board members, same ownership, but it's personal owned.
That would still be a government, yes.
I have a group of friends, all 10 of us. We make decisions about what the 10 of us do. Are we a government?
If the decisions of a majority can prevent a minority from exercising a right or a privilege, then that's, for purposes of this, a governmental or quasi-governmental body. If you're with a group of friends and you're all voting a place to eat, and 9 out of 10 of them say, let's do... Well, I'm getting some feedback.
Keep going.
Okay, yeah. If 9 out of 10 of the friends say, let's do McDonald's, and the one friend says, let's do Burger King, and so everyone goes to McDonald's, that's exercised a form of... a form of coercion, I guess you could say, on the one individual. So it is acting like a government in that very limited fashion. So even though you could have a board and call it just a, regulatory board or whatever in the company, then you're still doing the same, you're still ending up with the same result, which is you're restricting people from exercising their free will.
Kason, the more I talk to you, the more I realize, and I forget to realize, that you're borderline anarchistic. And I have to remember that when I debate you, because at the end of the day, you're going to make the argument there should be no government at all, and we should just rule ourselves.
I wouldn't argue that. I wouldn't argue that there should be no government. But...
buddy boy.
But
are you sure about that?
No, I'm not in the anarchist camp, but... it's still you still have the issue with socialism of it's either going to devolve into private ownership and anarcho-capitalism, or you're going to have some type of controlling authority that exercises power over people, whether they like it or not. It goes down one of those two paths. Or a third option. What's the third?
There is a third, which I know is very controversial to even mention this, but do you know where socialism, I don't know if this is where it came from, but I know this is where it got popular. Do you know what it is said to lead to?
What?
Communism.
Right.
Oh,
Marx said the stepping stone to communism and socialism. Our country will sooner or later become more and more socialistic until one day it realizes communism's a good idea.
Yeah, when I said a strong central authority that takes control, I repeat myself. That's communism. Communism is just the hard drug version of socialism.
There's a big difference between the two, but I'm going to save that for another day because I cannot wait to have that conversation with you. Because 90% of your listeners, I guarantee, don't know the difference and don't think there's a difference.
But have you not conceded the idea that socialism will inherently devolve into one of those two possibilities? Right?
Not necessarily, because I'll give you a fourth opinion, a fourth option, that it just works. That people maybe in this good system won't try and break it by breaking off into one of those two.
So you're saying this hypothetical ideology can work if every single person has a specific mindset regarding it, and that no one breaks rank, and that no one bends the rule.
We're not talking about literally everyone has to agree with it. I mean, that's
But if someone
not
doesn't,
have to happen.
But if someone doesn't agree with it, then they can start exchanging shares, and you start devolving into anarcho-capitalism.
Let's just say one person, they do break rank, and they say, you know what, I want more shares. I go to person two, can I buy your shares from you? And they say, I like how this works, so I'm not going to sell you my shares. Person three, how many do you think there's going to be needed? I mean, we're talking really about one way that this thing could break down if X happens. If one person or a few people decide, you know what, we don't want this anymore.
You don't think people have different desires and different opinions and different talents and different abilities?
Of course.
So
according to his...
everyone's going to have their own desires and goals and what they want. And so that's inherently going to lead to situations where person A is more productive in a task than person B. Person B is more productive in a task than person A, and so you get some trading that goes on, and it's mutually beneficial. That's going to...
Can I ask that we not stop this whole conversation, but at least stop this part and have you and I both leave after this and do research on socialist-controlled companies, because there are companies out there where the workers own a percentage share in the ownership of a company. That it happens today. This is not a foreign idea. It's just not an idea you and I are accustomed to in America, even though I'm sure there's got to be at least one or two companies. They're not Apple-sized, but at least one or two companies where this happens. But I just wanted to stop this very nice rabbit hole we're going down, even though it looks like I'm going down swinging, and just pick this up for another day and maybe have another update where we go, hey, we both did our research. Here's what I found out about this system that we're talking about.
I think that's
We've strayed so far from our main point.
I think that's a valid point. We can put a bookmark into this, and we can both check up on the idea of a self-owned or socially owned corporation, and then check back. Because as tempting as it might be to just agree to disagree and move on, if we don't resolve this core issue, like I said before, it can lead to issues down the road. So we'll bookmark this and discuss it down the road. I believe we are overdue for a PSA. Is that correct?
I believe it's about around the 45-minute mark.
Yeah, so let's do that real quick, and we'll be right back and talk about something much less brain-taxing.
Want to hear talented musicians perform for free? Go to the Hugh Hodgson School of Music student recitals and support UGA musicians. For more information and the calendar of events, visit www.music.uga.edu.
Every day, approximately 123 Americans die by suicide. With a focus on musicians, Nucci Space advocates for and helps to alleviate the suffering of those living with a brain illness and fights to end the stigma surrounding mental illness. If you or someone you know are struggling, you are not alone. Call 706-227-1515 to set up an appointment with our counseling advocate, Leslie. 1 in 5 individuals experience mental illness in a given year, and we are always here for you. If you are interested in finding out about our additional services, more information can be found at nucci.org.
All right, we are back. Jonathan, are you still on the air?
Yes, and if I can give a small update on our just now finished conversation.
Sure.
What we've been describing, what we've been talking about for the past, 15 minutes, is called a cooperative. That's what we're talking about. I always heard that term before, this and that cooperative. That's what we're talking about, is a employee-run company.
Okay.
That also you can have a shared ownership with.
Well, let's not open the can of worms, because I'll want to reorientate myself with that. But
oh, come on.
let me plug our stuff real quick again, since we're just starting this back up.
Yeah.
Have people tune in. All right, you're listening to Say What You Will on WOG 90.5 FM here in Athens, Georgia. It's terrestrial radio. Now, you may want to listen to us somewhere outside of Athens, but you can't. So you go on to WOG.org/live. You can listen to the audio stream there, or you can go onto our YouTube channel, Say What You Will Show. Search that on YouTube, and you can find our channel. Hit the subscribe button, a little bell notification. You know when we go live. Usually, we have a video feed of us and a little ticker and all that kind of good stuff of a stream while we're live and all that. And we're live right now if you want to tune in and see a montage of Nicolas Cage images.
all right. Wood, what were you saying about Navy right at the beginning?
So yesterday, Labor Day, they had one of the is basically what I would consider the first big football game of this season. It was Brigham Young University, BYU, facing Navy. And a fair amount of people picked Navy to win that game until they found out that Navy in their practices had not really gotten physical. What that means is all they've been tackling all practice was dummies. They had not been tackling each other in any shape, way, or form. So what ended up happening was, during 4 quarters, Brigham Young University hung 55 points on Navy, who only got a field goal.
Goodness. That's embarrassing.
Yes, it was 31 points at halftime.
Holy mackerel. Man. Yeah, that's rough.
It was a lot less of a game than I thought it would be. Of course, who thought that Navy was just going to, have a very weak practice for whatever reason?
So, Jonathan, this is a kind of unusual situation, but you might want to take advantage of it. Is there any topics that you would like to bring up? We kind of have a free pass for the next 10 minutes or so.
Not complete free pass.
Yeah,
there are
I will
topics we
restrict
cannot.
you. Yeah, I
There
will
are
not.
some
I will
topics.
not talk about K-pop. I will call it right there. I will yank the cord out of the receiver. I mean the transmitter before that happens. But
My goodness. With that extreme hatred. Goodness, man.
you got to draw the line somewhere, man.
Man of principle, I guess.
You got to draw the line somewhere.
Weird principles. Yeah, nothing really huge that is on my radar. I got a new game recently, Mario Party, that's been fun. And tomorrow, I did want to bring up with you guys in private, but hey, the world can know. In Georgia Southern, if you're just in the area, in Statesboro, Georgia, on campus, I'll be giving a small speech to our philosophy club about Confucian ethics. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Huh. That's interesting.
It's a very interesting club, especially since...
Now...
go on.
Oh, keep going.
How the club usually works is that we're in a classroom setting. Someone gets up, speaks for 10 to 15 minutes, and then we all kind of debate and question the speaker about the topic. But since COVID, we're not allowed in a classroom right now, or we are allowed if we find one, but none has been open for us. So we've been hosting it outside in a little area that has steps and grass. So it's about, I would say, maybe 3-4 feet of grass, and it steps up a little bit, 3 or 4 feet of grass steps up a little bit. So one person kind of sits in the middle, and it's curved like a half circle. So it's almost, we compare it to the symposium or Greek philosophy, where they would stand around and talk about philosophy, where one person is kind of speaking to the masses. And I kind of compared it to, I feel like I'm, Aristotle or Plato, just standing up and having a group of people around me while I speak on a topic. And we all agree that even if they let us back in the classrooms, I would vote personally, and some people would, for us to just stay outside because it's a better feeling. But that's what I'm going to be speaking on tomorrow afternoon, 6 o'clock. A fun time.
Huh. Sounds interesting. Now, you recently represented, I believe there was a podcast that you represented an organization in. Can you expound on that?
Yeah. I am part of an organization called the Ruist Association of America. Our main goal is to spread Ruist ideas and values throughout the U.S. the best we can. And there was a podcast recently. Do you mind if I plug it? Because people can look it up.
Yeah, sure.
Pray With Me, which was a very interesting podcast about different religions. And the best place to find it is an app called Podbean or something like that. But they asked me a bunch of questions about Ruish thought, mainly about ritual, and I was able to give pretty good answers, pretty concise answers on Ruism. There's some things that we talked about that I wasn't too familiar with because Confucianism or Ruism is such a vast topic that it's hard to get, unless you're going for what I'm going for a degree, it's hard to get a concise idea of every strand of, every school of thought in Ruism. But it was a lot of fun. The woman who hosted, she's very nice, and she told me about the other interviews she's done. Zoroastrianism, I believe Christianity, paganism, different religious schools, and I was lucky enough to be on there. It was a lot of fun. And hopefully to do more. I hope to start my own podcast, which hopefully I can plug one day on your show, because can't get enough of those viewers. But I do hope to do more on the subject. All three of them. I do hope to cover the subject more in a personal way and less academic. There are different, funny enough, Ruism or Ruja, which is one of the ways to say it. There are actually three separate ways of looking at Ruism: a way of life, an academic institution and or study, and a religious institution or study. So there's three different kind of schools when it comes to Ruism, and I definitely belong in more academic camp. But I hope to go more into the lifestyle camp, way of living your life by these principles. So I'm kind of a little bit of both, but I hopefully do more podcasts aimed towards the lifestyle view of Ruism, way of applying values to your life, different virtues, and how to gain them. So look out for that.
Once you get that up and going, we might have to have you on sometime and do a full length episode and kind of deep dive into different concepts around that.
Some sort of crossover.
Yeah. Funnily enough, Jonathan has been studying and interested in Ruism for quite a while now. So obviously Wood and I have been exposed to it a fair amount. And the other day I was like 30 pages deep into my contracts reading assignments, turned the page, and smack dab right there is a Confucius quote in my contracts legal textbook. And I know I already told you this, Jonathan, but it was just kind of a shock and funny, but to see the influence of them.
It was good to see a real Confucius quote, because most of the ones you'll see around are fake ones that they don't make me mad. They more just make me slightly upset that it's become a part of our culture to make up quotes for Confucius, just attribute any kind of wise or funny saying to him, because it's some Eastern philosophy or religion that most people know at least the name, but know nothing about. So if you hear a quote, you just accept it as true, unless it's obviously, dumb or silly. But I remember in high school there was a poster with a Confucius quote, and I did everything I could to find it, because I said, that's such a good quote, but was it him? And I looked at my teacher and said, I've looked for days now, and I know a lot of the text that if it was attributed to Confucius, you'd find it in these 5 books or 4 books, and that's not a real Confucius quote. And all their answer was, yes, it is. I'm like, okay, good enough. I tried.
Yeah, they did their research in the textbook, because they actually listed it as the analytics, and they gave the exact subsection of the analytics. I don't remember what it was, but they did their homework on it.
I'm definitely going to have this one long podcast show with you, because it's not called the analytics. And that is so funny.
Wait,
I've never heard someone call it the analytics.
What is it called?
The analytics.
Oh, analytics. I'm sorry. I'm sure that's what it said. I guess I misremembered.
It's like me going up to you and say, yeah, I got this real quote from the Bible. Jesus said it himself. It's in the Bible.
Oh, yeah, you got me. I just saw the general shape of the word and assumed.
His mind is full of a lot of torts.
Court of Access we've talked about forever.
Dude,
from the beginning of time until the end of time should be a position that you wait on in fantasy football.
You know the scene
how
in The
soon
Office
do Lamar
where
Jackson and
Kevin
Patrick
walks
Mahomes
in
actually
with
go in your drafts?
the whole big thing of
what
chili?
impact does that have on how
him
you
walking in the door with that thing of
draft
chili
or
precariously held in his
potentially
arms? That's my brain carrying a metric ton of
I got to start with you because Julio Jones, overwhelmingly number one for most of the people you talk to, as I understand it.
Have you fallen yet?
Not
Ryan,
yet.
I went into this
Operative
process thinking Michael Thomas would push Julio Jones to the number one spot. It didn't.
Now imagine doing all what you're doing, which I'm not comparing my work to yours, but imagine doing all what you're doing while learning a foreign language, and how quick that pot would drop if you were also learning, let's just say, hypothetically, Chinese.
Oh, dude, that reminds me. Believe it or not, I'll have to give you the details later, but I actually ran into someone who has taken a semester of Mandarin and was like speaking it to me. So I'll have to fill you in on that. But anyway,
if you can tell me what they said, I can translate.
No, I do not remember the actual Mandarin.
And probably do not want to try.
But yeah. Anyway, we got 5 minutes left. Anything else y'all want to go over? I know this is kind of anticlimactic, but at the same time, it's our show, our rules.
I guess the NFL starts up this Sunday, so there's that.
The election's coming up soon. Who are you voting for?
Who am I voting for? You know, I haven't decided yet. They're so similar. No, very funny.
I thought about the Libertarian candidate, but I just can't take that vice president seriously.
No, they say there are. I'm not even going to try. Yeah, you know who we're voting for. Who are you voting for?
Actually, there was a third party that was coming up. It's not really a party, more of an initiative called Unity 2020. And they had an election to pick their candidates. And the list was very interesting, and Andrew Yang was on it. But I need to, spoiler alert, he didn't win. But the candidates I was voting for was Andrew Yang and William H. McRaven. So their idea was to pick one left and one right, or one middle left, one middle right, and one. I think I've told you this. One would be president, one would be vice president, and then the next year they would switch. I voted for Andrew Yang and William H. McRaven. The winners were, I want to say, Jesse Ventura and Dan Crenshaw.
Okay, I don't see that happening, but that would be interesting.
I've decided just to vote for Andrew Yang and William McRaven instead.
Just going to write them in?
Just going to write them in. I vote with my morals, and those two are good moral men.
I mean, it's a perfect opportunity to vote for the actual, upcoming president, Vermin Supreme.
Oh, no, I'm going, who is it? I'm Mr. President Tiger King. That's who I'm voting for. That's the real one.
Joe Exotic.
I've been hiding that all along. Joe Exotic. Joe Exotic 2020. That's who I'm really going for.
Funny enough.
Get him out of prison.
Just real quick while we're still on air. Joe Exotic, remember there's a Nicolas Cage TV series.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Where he will portray Joe Exotic in this limited series.
I cannot wait for that right there.
So
I cannot wait.
Yes.
That's going
Is it even going to be made? That's the question.
I don't know. Cage gave an interview not too long ago, like just maybe about a week ago. I haven't listened to it yet. But it seems to be rocking along just a little bit. I'm tweeting about it every day. It's been 125 days since they announced it.
All right. Well, I guess let's wind things down. We don't have much time left. But I think, this kind of gave me an idea on our discussion about classification of Nazism. What we might want to do, since this is obviously going to take us a long time, we might want to just devote a time slot in the show to it and advance it a little bit each week rather than just have a big barf session.
Real quick, you could just do this separately, record it.
Oh, record it in post-production.
And then post it on our
or
YouTube channel or broadcast the highlights.
That's an idea. We may work on some of those. You like the idea of some of those, Jonathan?
Sounds great to me. Has me on more, that's for sure.
Yeah, we'll definitely figure that out, and hopefully we'll be back to full production.
We will update everyone listening about that plan.
But thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back next week. We thank Jonathan for being with us as always. This is WUOG 90.5